about, it's more about .NET MAUI, so the MAUI, which stands for Multi-Application User Interface, something like that, most likely. I just know it lovingly as .NET MAUI. And we'll talk a bit about Xamarin, but the session is mostly about how .NET MAUI is, and the code that I'm going to show you later on is also going to be .NET MAUI. But to kick off, how many of you have had experience with Xamarin Forms in the past? Have you heard of it? Seen it maybe? Heard it? Probably from us.
The guy who created GNOME.
The guy who created GNOME.
Yes.
You know a bit of the story, that the history of what happened behind. Xamarin is not very new. It kind of took fame in the 2014s, there somewhere there. But it's something that from the early 2000s they were working on. But we'll get to that in a bit. Have you guys worked with any cross-platform mobile development framework or technology?
Qt.
Which one?
Qt.
Qt.
No, it is Qt. Should be spelled
Qt sounds better. For you? Flutter? Yeah, that's nice. Xamarin? Yeah, I know for you. Anybody else? React Native, that's also a really good one. I try to compare a bit of how .NET MAUI is versus React Native. I can't compare it too much with Flutter. I've touched it, but essentially I did a hello world, so that's not enough experience for me to compare it with Flutter. But yeah, there are some pros and cons now. In certain situations, actually, we go for React Native. Maybe we'll touch on that. It's not in the slide, but it's a nice conversation. Okay, so Xamarin, it's today, let's say, well, Xamarin and .NET MAUI. Today, it's an offering, and I am putting an emphasis on today because it did not start that way, but it's an offering from Microsoft now to get into the cross-platform mobile development game. So that's their solution, just like we have Flutter, we have React Native. In the past, we had others, Apache Cordova, something like that, I think. Yeah. So there were other solutions, but that's their offering on, hey, how can you go about writing code and then targeting multiple platforms, iOS, Android, and even more now with .NET MAUI. That's their answer. Before I move to the next slide, there are a lot of conversations of which one is the best. And my take on that is the same take that I have on which one is the best between Linux and Windows or Mac OS. And the same take I have on which one is the best iOS versus Android. It depends. None of them are, we would say, is the best for everything. Each one of them have their own purpose, let's say, their own situation where they shine best. But usually you can do almost anything you want with any of those technologies. So, my name is Vidush. I don't know if you guys have been to other sessions. I usually present at developers. I remember you from the developers conference, you as well. I remember Ish from when he used to grill me during my sessions. So yeah, I present quite regularly at conferences, meetups, and things like that. And I think 2023 is going to be interesting since we are kicking off January with a monthly MSCC meetup. So that's great. Looking forward for the code and coffee next. I myself have my own business that I've launched. I started off as a freelancer, and then I registered it as a company, so it's called Orion Consulting. I want to change the name to Orion Next very soon. And I also work at SD-Works as a product owner. But you guys don't care about me too much right now, so we move to the session. Xamarin and Xamarin Forms, that's where it started. So they tried to find a way, like I was saying, to write a single code base so that you can target multiple platforms. There are a lot of ways to do that. There is one way that we've all been doing it, if all of us are developers here, that we might not realize. What's the one easiest way to write a code and have it run cross-platform? It's the easiest answer. Web development. Web development. There are tools to build apps using web technologies that then run as desktop app and things like that. That's how Visual Studio Code, that's what it uses behind. Sorry? Electron, yeah. So, yeah, web development. But for Microsoft, they did not start with Xamarin. So this is the did you know part. Essentially, Xamarin started as an experimental project with a group of people. I believe it was like a community thing, open source from the start. But don't quote me on that, I have to fact check it. But then it was known as Mono library. So that's how it started.
Still known.
Sorry?
Still known as Mono.
It's still known as Mono, yeah. And that is what evolved into Xamarin. So actually when you code in Xamarin, when you use the packages, you will often see a lot of references to Mono in there because the logic behind, let's say the core of it, is Mono. That was Xamarin. Now, the way Xamarin was, it was, you saw how Dhanesh created a project earlier. So he had a solution with a project inside. So the way Xamarin worked was, you would get a project per platform. So if you want to target iPhones and let's say Androids, you would get an Android project, an iPhone project. And each of them, so essentially you're still not writing fully one code base. You still have two sets of codes because you have to cater for the platforms, and a little bit of it you can push to a shared library and share. That was okay for back then. Then they came up with Xamarin Forms. So for Xamarin Forms, they put the focus on how can we put all the code that is actually easily shared, and all the platforms would use the same. How can we put all of that into one project? And the remaining ones, the iOS project, the Android projects, we use that just for iOS specific things and Android specific things. So that was Xamarin Forms. So you would still have 3 or 4 projects in your solution. But today with .NET MAUI, essentially what happens is you get a single project. What they did is, and it's going to resemble, it's starting to look more and more like a web project for the structure, when I look at it at least. It's one project, one code base. There are no other Android or iOS projects, no other code bases. The code is immediately shared. The reason why we still had the other projects before was because there are some things that are specific to the platforms. For example, images. So on Android, you would have to have different scales of the same image, and you need to have that in your resources. For iPhone as well, for iOS, I think it's even mandatory that you need the different scales at 2x, 3x, so you have your base image, but you need to have the same image at 2x and 3x as well, so that it can scale with the size of the phones. And the naming conventions were different, the folder structure were different. That's why we had separate projects, because we had to take the same image that we want to put in each of them, and then create versions of it for Android and versions of it for iOS. So the concept has not changed too much, but they put this entire management of resources thing into the same one code base and made MAUI more intelligent so that it can do it for you. That's essentially the basis of .NET MAUI. And yes, it's looking at you, it's open source. Yes. Okay. This is not information from me, this is information from Microsoft itself. They have a GitHub page where they compare Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI. I did not put the link in here, but I can add it later on before I put the slide up on GitHub. Usually I put my slides up on GitHub itself. So the .NET MAUI project has support for the newer API versions. That's no surprise there. New API versions have come out for Android and iOS, so they support it. The Windows part has changed. I don't know how many of you know about UWP. It kind of went under the radar a bit. Yeah, we worked on some things earlier on. That was the Universal Windows Platform. That was when Windows was coming out with Windows Phone. It's about the same time that this came out. And the idea was you write one code targeting UWP, and it can work on any Windows operating system. I think even on your Xbox, you could have that target your Xbox or something like that. So this has changed. The concept is still the same. WinUI wants to do the same thing, but they've changed the core mechanics of how it works. So now we go from UWP and it supports WinUI, which is the latest, let's say, version if you want to write a Windows application. And as a side note, so if you write a .NET MAUI application, you are targeting easily, you can target Android, iOS, and the Windows desktop as well. We don't have Windows phones anymore. I like them actually. They were good phones. Use of native components. I did not go into too much details here, but they optimized it so that when you are writing the code in C# and you are targeting the other platforms, it's closer to what the native renderers, the native logic would be. So for example, if you put a button in your code, simple button logic, it's going to translate this into what Android knows natively as a button and what iOS knows natively as a button, which makes things a lot faster. And the closer you get to the native language of the system, the more performant usually your application gets. Single multi-targeting multi-window project, that's what I spent the last 3 minutes talking about, single project targeting multiple platforms. Support for hot quick reload, React Native, you use Expo for the hot reload works there. You change your code, you save, and it takes a second, and then it immediately appears on the phone. Maybe not even a second. So hot reload was really good in React Native. I actually really wanted that on Xamarin. That was one of my problems with Xamarin Forms. It had it, but it was not good. It did not always work as I wanted it to. On React Native, it was great. I never had too many issues with it. And it's easy to start, to get going with your debugging. For React Native, you write your code, you run it, it gives you a QR code, you scan it, the app is on your phone. No wires, no nothing. The app is on your phone, you test it. That's a great experience. But hot reload is not, let's say, my favorite thing on Xamarin Forms. They tried it. But on .NET MAUI, they actually added full support for hot reload. I've tested it with the emulators. It's great, it actually works. Whenever, let's say, it's not able to hot reload something, because let's say you changed a logic behind the scenes, like something that goes to the database, it also can detect that and it lets you know that this area I'm not able to hot reload, so it's pretty good. The last part is support for .NET CLI with an asterisk there. So it's not like you can kick off a project completely on Visual Studio Code just using .NET CLI. Technically you can, but it's still, let's say, in an experimental phase. All right, so that's for the, let's say, differences between Xamarin and .NET MAUI, what is new. And this is the app we'll be developing. Well, I've already developed it, but we'll be going through today. So, 2023, and I thought about what could I do with 2023. And I thought maybe it's about time I get some fitness goals into my 2023. As you can see, I'm very athletic. So I thought I should use that. Now, like any normal, sane person, you do what everybody would do, right? You develop an application for it. So that's what I did. So I actually took, there is an app called Freeform, it's like a Canvas app, and I drew this on a tablet, and I did not do mockups or anything, I just wanted to look at, hey, what would it look like if I wanted to develop an application. This is a snippet of it. You see that arrow over there? It actually goes to another big area where I broke down how the application would work. It's all about fitness. So yeah, this is what I want to try to develop. It's not complete yet, I'm going to be honest. it's an actual thing I'm developing. I think I am almost done with the page on the right. The page on the left would be, the concept is, let's say you want to go running three times a week, and you want to be able to, you want to track that you're drinking water twice a day, 7 days a week. The idea is, it's not on this, I don't want to say bubble. It's not on this diagram, but normally there would be like a plus button. You tap the plus button, it will open the page on the left, and there you'll be able to fill in what do you want to track. How many times per week do you want to do that? How many times per day do you want to do that? And then you start tracking, and it ends up creating a small widget, and you have your trackers there. I do want to make it a bit smarter in the future, but I want to start with something simple. Then you would get a progress bar. You see the bar that says this is a ribbon. I'm also thinking about putting a progress bar there, so you know your weekly where you've reached, and you have a general progress bar for the week. Very simple idea. But I'm still on that page on the right. I have not gotten to the page on the left yet, so we won't see that today. And even on the page on the right, there are some things missing. You'll notice it. But the general idea is there, and it's solid enough for me to be able to do a presentation on that. All right. The application will before sale at $99. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the last note. For those who have worked with Xamarin Forms, yeah, your skills are still relevant. I talked about the changes that happened, but you will notice that I did not say anything changed code-wise, which means what you are used to, the way you are used to writing code, will still apply. I'm gonna be honest. This application I developed it in. This is the first .NET MAUI application I developed, so I'm not really too experienced in .NET MAUI. I should not be here, but I did do a lot of Xamarin Forms, and when I started the .NET MAUI code base and I started writing code, I felt right at home. I did not see anything different, and I checked it. I searched for it. I looked for documentation just in case I am doing something wrong, and this is the case. So same patterns, and they are adding support for even more patterns of development. The same type of code. It's easily, let's say, you can shift from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI. Maybe to put this in a one line, I did not have to learn anything new to be able to start coding in .NET MAUI, given that I have the Xamarin Forms experience. All right, let's see some codes. So, how to create a project. I'm not going to do live coding. There are a lot of things already there. I want to cover them. But how do you create a project? You just create a new project from your Visual Studio 2022. That's the IDE you want. You do need .NET 6 installed, and you do need the .NET MAUI development tools installed, so from the Visual Studio installer. Once you are in, if you search for MAUI, you should get it. And here you have a MAUI app, a MAUI Blazor app, a MAUI class library. The MAUI app is the one that creates for iOS, Android, and so on and so forth. The Blazor app also does that, but it's using Blazor. So I don't know how familiar you are with Blazor, but that's, let's say that's what they launched for the PWA market, Progressive Web App market. That's the solution that they launched, the Blazor one. Class libraries, if you want, in your MAUI project, let's say, you want to add a shared library, you want to break your code into smaller packages, that's what you'll be using. But normally, if you go for the .NET MAUI app, you go in, you put a name, I believe, it should ask you which framework you want to use. I do have .NET 7, where's Dhanesh? I do have .NET 7, but yeah, you have the different versions of .NET framework. Obviously 6 is the minimum, it runs on .NET 6. And then you create. I won't create this, I already have a project. Once you create your project, you won't have this many folders.